My own son looked me in the eyes and said, "Dad, you're too old to run this company anymore." 10 minutes later, security was escorting me out of the building I had spent 38 years building with my own hands. I wish I could tell you that was the worst part, but it wasn't. The worst part came when I realized my own family was standing behind him, watching me leave without saying a word. If you enjoy stories that remind us how quickly family can change, consider subscribing to Family Betrayal. And one more thing before we keep going. The faces, photos, and background scenes you see are simply visual illustrations to help tell this story. They're not real images of the people involved. I started my construction company with an old pickup truck, a borrowed toolbox, and less than $500. There were nights my wife and I skipped dinner so we could make payroll. My son, Ryan, grew up riding beside me on job sites. I honestly believed one day I'd proudly hand him the keys. When Ryan came back from business school, everyone praised him. He had fresh ideas, expensive suits, and confidence that filled every room. I was proud of him, maybe too proud. I slowly let him make more decisions while I focused on mentoring younger employees. Then little things started changing. Employees who had worked beside me for decades stopped making eye contact. Meetings happened without inviting me. My office assistant suddenly needed approval before scheduling my calendar. One Friday morning, Ryan called an executive meeting. He smiled and announced that the board had voted for new leadership. I laughed because I thought it was a joke. Then he slid a folder toward me. Inside was a retirement agreement with my name already printed. "You've done enough, Dad," he said calmly. "The company needs someone younger." I looked around the room. Not one person defended me. As security walked me outside, I noticed something strange. 3 longtime foremen were standing across the parking lot. None of them waved. None of them smiled. They simply watched me, like they were waiting for something they couldn't say out loud. I sat in my truck for almost an hour, staring at the company logo on the building. That sign carried my last name because I had earned every single letter on it. I kept asking myself where I had gone wrong. Had I trusted Ryan too much? Had I stayed too long? Before I could convince myself to drive away, my phone buzzed. It was Mike, one of the foremen who had been with me for nearly 30 years. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Don't come back here, Jack. Ryan's watching everyone. Just don't sign anything yet." Before I could ask another question, he hung up. That single warning kept echoing in my head. Why would he tell me not to sign the retirement papers? What was Ryan hiding? The next morning, I met Mike at a small diner outside town. He looked nervous, constantly checking the windows. Finally, he leaned across the table. "Ryan's changing everything," he said. "He's cutting corners, replacing trusted suppliers with cheaper companies, and firing anyone who questions him." I couldn't believe it. My company had been built on one promise. If we said we'd do the job right, we did it right. Reputation mattered more than profit. Mike pulled a folded document from his jacket. It was a list of canceled contracts and unpaid invoices Ryan had been hiding from me for months. "There are more," Mike whispered. "People are scared." I drove home feeling sick. My wife tried to comfort me, but even she admitted Ryan had become different after taking control. Success had turned into arrogance. Every conversation with him sounded like he was competing instead of listening. 2 days later, another unexpected call came in. The screen showed the name of our biggest client, a man named David Collins. We'd worked together for nearly 20 years. "I need to ask you something," David said. "Did you really retire?" I hesitated. "No," I answered quietly. "I was forced out." There was silence on the other end. Then David said something that made my heart race. "That's not what your son told me." He explained Ryan had claimed I was suffering from memory problems and wasn't capable of making business decisions anymore. According to Ryan, stepping away had been my own choice. I felt my hands shaking so badly, I almost dropped the phone. David sighed. "I've trusted you for 2 decades, Jack. I don't know who to believe anymore, but I'm coming to town tomorrow. Before I sign Ryan's new contract, I want to hear your side." As I ended the call, I realized everything depended on that meeting. If David believed Ryan, I'd lose the company forever. But if he believed me, my son was about to face a consequence he never saw coming. I barely slept that night. Every memory of Ryan as a little boy kept crashing into the reality of the man he had become. I wasn't worried about losing money anymore. I was grieving the son I thought I knew. The next afternoon, David Collins walked into the same diner where Mike and I had met. He shook my hand the way he always had, but I could see the questions in his eyes. "Tell me everything," he said. So I did. I told him how I had been blindsided by the board meeting, how I had never agreed to retire, and how employees had quietly warned me not to sign any documents. I didn't exaggerate. I didn't attack Ryan. I simply told the truth. When I finished, David reached into his briefcase. I figured one of you wasn't being honest, he said. He placed Ryan's proposal on the table. As I read through it, my stomach tightened. Ryan had promised impossible completion dates, switched to low-cost materials without telling the client, and even removed several quality guarantees that had always protected our customers. David looked at me. I knew something felt wrong. Your company has never done business like this. Just then my phone rang. It was Ryan. Dad, he said confidently. David's about to sign the biggest contract in company history. I hope you're finally ready to move on. I looked across the table at David, who slowly shook his head. I answered calmly. I don't think that's going to happen. Ryan laughed. You don't know what you're talking about. I held the phone away so David could speak. Ryan, David said firmly, I've decided not to renew our contract. There was complete silence. Then Ryan's voice cracked for the first time. What? I'm walking away, David continued. I built this partnership because of your father. Without his integrity, I'm taking my business somewhere else. The call ended. For the first time since I'd been thrown out of my own company, I felt hope. But the victory didn't last long. Less than an hour later, Mike called again. Jack, it's getting ugly, he said. The board just found out they lost David's contract. They're demanding answers. Ryan's blaming you for everything. Then Mike lowered his voice. And someone just handed the directors a folder full of financial records they were never supposed to see. I closed my eyes. Whatever was inside that folder was about to expose far more than Ryan had ever imagined. And by morning, my son's entire future could be destroyed. The next morning, I drove past the office but stayed across the street. I wasn't ready to walk back inside. That company had been my life, but I didn't want to return because my son had failed. I wanted the truth to come out. Around 9 o'clock, my phone started ringing nonstop. First Mike, then 2 project managers, then one of the board members. By the time I answered, the board had already spent hours reviewing the financial records. Ryan hadn't just hidden unpaid invoices. He had approved inflated executive bonuses while delaying payments to trusted subcontractors. He had signed risky agreements without legal review, ignored quality inspections, and even misled the board about several major accounts. The directors realized they hadn't removed the problem. They had removed the wrong man. An hour later, I was invited back to the office. Walking through those doors felt strange. The same employees who had avoided looking at me days earlier were now standing in the hallway. Some apologized. Others simply nodded with tears in their eyes. The board chairman met me in the conference room. He stood up before I could even sit down. Jack, he said quietly, we owe you an apology. We trusted the wrong person. Ryan was sitting at the far end of the table. For the first time in his life, he looked scared. No expensive suit could hide it. No confident speech could fix it. The chairman informed him that he was being removed as CEO effective immediately, while an independent audit continued. Ryan looked at me. Dad, please say something. For a moment, I remembered the little boy who used to hold my hand on construction sites. Part of me wanted to protect him. Another part remembered the day security escorted me out of my own building. I finally spoke. I didn't lose this company, Ryan. You lost yourself. He lowered his head. Then something happened I never expected. David Collins walked into the room. He placed a new contract on the table. I told everyone the same thing, he said. I don't do business with titles. I do business with character. He slid the contract toward me. If you're willing to lead again, my company is staying. The room fell silent. The board unanimously asked me to return, not as a temporary replacement, but as president and CEO until a long-term succession plan could be built on accountability instead of family loyalty. I accepted, but on one condition. No one, including my own family, would ever receive special treatment again. Every promotion would be earned. Every decision would be transparent. Every employee would be judged by integrity, not by their last name. Ryan packed his office that afternoon. As he walked past me carrying a small cardboard box, he stopped. I'm sorry, Dad. I believed he meant it. But forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. Some lessons can only be learned after everything you took for granted is gone. Months later, the company was profitable again. Former clients returned. Employees smiled without fear, and the culture we had spent decades building slowly came back to life. Looking back, I realized the hardest betrayal wasn't losing my position. It was discovering that success without humility can turn family into strangers. If there's one lesson this experience taught me, it's this: never confuse authority with character, and never let trust replace accountability. Now I want to ask you something. If your own child betrayed you to take everything you built, would you have forgiven them, or would you have walked away forever? Share your thoughts in the comments because I'd truly like to hear your perspective. If this story touched you, please share it with a friend or family member who needs the reminder that integrity always outlasts ambition. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Family Betrayal for more unforgettable stories where the truth always finds its way to the surface. Thank you for listening. And remember, the strongest foundation you'll ever build isn't made of concrete. It's made of character.